Boys divided all their chores out, between the three of them, so it's not now they're back to staying.
Oh,
More
yeah.
chores again, they're trying to.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and he put one.
Well, I think you tried to.
He said,
I noticed that.
that was just kind of off the top. He said, it's the actual dig into zucchini.
So I was thinking, I knew it started.
Are we ready?
Yes, sir.
Call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Stuart Municipal Utility Board. It's Thursday, July 14th. I'll call the roll. Kim?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
I'm here. Shirley?
Here.
And Craig.
Here.
First item we'll deal with here is the agenda approval and the consent agenda. I wanted to make one comment here. I put a statement in there in your packet that I'd like admitted to the minutes for tonight's meeting. It was a response to what Brian put in and published in the minutes last month.
Okay.
So, yep, so, but other than that, we're going to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of June 9th, the special meeting of June 21st, the special meeting of June 27th, the financial statement and the bills as presented. So when you have a chance to look at that, I'll entertain a motion.
You need a motion, Tom?
I need a motion.
I make a motion.
Motion by Brian, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Kim, how do you vote? Kim,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
I vote aye. Shirley,
Aye.
and Craig.
Aye.
Next item is item number 5, Resolution 22-12U, resolution authorizing adoption of policies and procedures regarding municipal securities disclosure.
This is something we do manually.
Is this something we do every year?
Yes.
Or- Okay,
Chef and our founder too does it for us.
I read through some of that, Ash. There's some training they hold like in the first part of the year.
Yes.
Do you or any of your staff go to that?
I have been to some
Okay.
of the stuff.
Okay. I'm sure any board member would like to go, would be
Yes.
welcome to.
Sure, yeah,
It's probably pretty interesting, so.
yes.
So I think we need a motion to approve that municipal securities disclosure.
I'll make the motion.
Moved by Kim,
Second.
second by Shirley. How do you vote? Brian?
Yes.
I vote aye. Shirley?
Aye.
Craig?
Aye.
And Kim.
Yes.
Next item is number 6, Resolution 22-13U, resolution approving contract and performance and/or payment bonds for the 2022 water main improvements project. This is one we had to table from last month, isn't it?
No, actually, this one, we did the award of the contract at your June 21st meeting,
Oh, okay,
and this is the contract and bonds returned from the contractor as a result of that.
okay,
We sent them all the paperwork, they went through it, they got everything done. Everything has been executed, sent back to us, we reviewed it, everything looks to be in order. And so it's ready for you to approve the contracted bonds and then sign those contracts.
Okay. Any questions? If not, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Moved by Craig. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Shirley. How do you vote? I vote aye. Shirley?
Aye.
Craig?
Aye.
Kim?
Yes.
And Brian?
No.
Next item is
So I've got
item number 7,
copies.
Snyder and Associates Agreement Packet and Water Tower Color.
Those are all labeled for you.
Do you need
Oh,
it
okay.
tonight? Wait, do you need it tonight or?
I don't have to have those tonight. If you want to sign those, you could mail, I could either pick it up when I'm here again, or you could mail it directly to the contractor, for example, their copy.
Do you want them over before I sign them?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I don't have the agenda in front of me. What else did you have?
There's, item number 7 is Agreement Packet and the Water Tower Color.
Water tower color, right. So the agreement packet we just did,
Okay,
I've got the color card. I don't know, you know, how much thinking you're looking, if you want to pass this around.
I got one too here. Then you get.
Yeah, same thing.
Same thing.
It's really, you could have anything you want, really. If we go much beyond a basic color, any color, a single color is the way I'll say it. If we go beyond a single color with a single town name, then there might be a slight additional charge. We just have to negotiate that with the contractor. But that was my impression, was that you were going to
But
go
one
with
color
a
is
color
included
and
in
a town.
in the bid, right?
Right.
Okay.
And you could have that town name on both sides, so it's visible, you know, both directions.
Do you have a picture of what it looks like, Jeff?
You know what, I didn't bring my plan book with me. I mean, if you know some of the towers in the area, that it's round spheroid.
Oh, okay,
Just
like
like
a
Dares, right?
Yeah, it's like a Dares, only a little larger than a Dares.
okay.
It's similar to what Ogden has, you know, that big spheroid is what they call it, but
Okay, okay,
It's not gonna be four-legged like this.
yeah, it's just got a pedestal, a single column, and then a cone at the bottom to spread the load out.
okay. So, color, anybody,
I just have it in white, and this one white.
yeah. Can you get the color white
Is
from
this
who does?
tank white?
Is that what the color of the one we have now?
I don't know what the color is other than just
It's-
white.
We can find out.
It
but
can
it's
make a
just
difference, so
white. Yeah,
if we can match the color of this one, I'd say that's the color I'd want.
That's kind of what the advantage of white is, even though it will sometimes show algae on the pole, it just seems to stay looking nicest the
Yeah.
longest, and it just keeps it cool, you know, it's a reflective color.
It's black lettering.
And then as far as the font style for the name, they tell me that pretty much any font in Microsoft Word you could select. Many towns pick a basic block font because it's easier to read,
Yeah.
but that's really your choice. And so, you know, and once we'll submit that to the contractor and they'll send back a mock-up of that, which I'll get to you for your review too before we do the final approval.
Obviously, it's up to you guys, but we kind of thought maybe just something that matched what we have now.
Well, I think
Just
I'm
looks
thinking that way.
Probably get a hold of I'm sorry, Viking. And they could probably give us,
The font of what's
yeah,
up
the
there
font
now.
we have.
Absolutely, yeah, I'm sure that could work.
If they can tell us what color that is and use the font, I would say that's what we want to use, so. Okay, all
Sounds good.
right,
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you,
Do
sir.
you need anything else from me tonight? Or how about a really quick update on the schedule for the foundation? You have 2 minutes?
Sure.
So, our survey crew may be here on site either tomorrow or Monday to stake the geopiers, which go underneath the water tower foundation. If you're not familiar with geopiers, it's They drill about a 24-inch diameter hole, roughly 10 to 12 feet deep. They have to reach the glacial till layer of the soil is what they have to do. And then they compact gravel in each one of those. And then they put the footing on top of those geopiers. So they'll be here probably in the next week to 10 days to install those geopiers. And then very soon after that, a different subcontractor will come in to start working on that footing for the water tower.
I think they had to do something similar when they put the wind turbine, probably. Had to dig a hole in
I'm sure it is similar to a tower, yes.
rock or something in there.
So just kind of an update that is very close to taking off.
Okay.
So,
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you all.
New residential property water connection inspection by Beecher and Kim.
Is Jason on the phone?
No,
Oh, he didn't. So Ben kind of talked about this a little bit at the last meeting, or one of the 2 meetings ago, maybe it was. And basically, it would be them inspecting from the curb stop to the house where nobody really inspects now. And
Have we had any issues with the current process?
Yeah, multiple issues.
just do it.
We have a real problem with communication with the contractor because the contractor deals with the city on the building permit, but they don't directly deal with utilities on anything. So we like to inspect before they backfill. Generally, since utilities are already stubbed out to the property, they don't technically need us there for anything, for them to hook up and run it to the house. So the majority of them never contact us. They show up, they dig it up, they put in their water line, they backfill. We never even know it until we get out there. And that is the issue. They
Well, we
sometimes,
never had a connection issue, is that right, or we have?
well, we've had multiple issues where we've had to get a hold of contractors to try and get them back out here, and it can be kind of a lengthy thing. Because like they aren't even aware that they need to call us. They don't have contact information. They do have all that information for B and K because they're already working with B and K on with their building permit.
So rather than gouging taxpayers more, we just got B and K to do residential permits. Everybody said the rates didn't go up, which is completely not true. A new house used to cost $1,300. Now B and K is charging $1,700 on top of that. So you got a brand new utility customer step in the inspection process or they have to contact us, but I mean, charging $200 to do that. I mean, we've got a new utility customer, new taxpayer. And I guess to me, I'm not into fees and gouging taxpayers at all.
Well, the good news is that fee has not been set, and that fee is something that would be negotiated between you and B and K. So
If they take
price.
it to zero, that's great, but
Well-
I'm sure they won't.
Well, I think that's something the board would have to discuss with B and K. When he threw out that price, he, at the time, said, I'm throwing out this price. That is a price that we would decide between, if you chose to do this, between B and K and the board. So I think that is up for negotiation. I know that with this is them inspecting the water, the other half is them inspecting the sewer line that goes in. So I don't know where the city council is on it. If they have adopted that, if they plan to.
They were told the rates were not going to go up. Conveniently, the city's rates did not go up, but B and K's obviously added rates on top of them, which is whatever. So the cost just for a permit to build a new house is now $3,000 versus $1,300. So I've got those numbers specifically, and we don't need to make it $3,400. I'm not in favor of that, I guess, but.
I guess one thing to keep in mind is not so much what is the fee, but is the fee consistent with what it is in other cities? And aside from that, the majority of the houses built out there right now sell for between $250,000 to $350,000. 2 houses just built out there. One was $340,000, one was $350,000. They're not finished,
Those
and they're
are outliers, so that's
But-
really a fair comparison.
Okay.
That's 2 out of 30 homes that are getting built in these
let's say 250, because I think we can agree that that is an average selling price, possibly on the low end. If you're spending $250,000, would you have an expectation that your water, sewer, and utilities were installed according to code and according, to the plumbing code, of Iowa? And when you're spending $250,000 on a house, are you willing to spend an extra $200 to know that it's done properly?
But it's not 200, it's 2,000, because again, I just said, 1,300 is what we used to charge. Now we're up to 3,400, counting the city's portion. So we've added on more than double of the initial cost for what?
Brian, I can't imagine that a new homeowner wouldn't anticipate some costs like that.
Then why? I mean, when does the government stop taking money from taxpayers?
This isn't a tax, it's a
It sure is.
It's a
fee,
cost of doing
something to pay
business.
for it.
It's a cost of buying a house.
Okay,
Have you ever had where that they didn't put in the correct piping or whatever for the sewer or the water? I mean, this is the issue.
Yes, we've had a couple instances. So for a specific example, we require a minimum pressure rating on the pipe that is installed. If a contractor puts in a pipe that is a lower pressure rating than what we require, the way we have viewed this in the past is, although it does not meet our requirement, technically it is beyond the curb stop and it is beyond what we own. We own up to including the curb stop. So it becomes very difficult to justify if you're gonna make them dig up and replace that line. We kind of let it, up till now, fall into the category of, it's not really right, but technically it's the homeowner's problem, so we will let the homeowner bear the responsibility because they bought that home and that's the plumber that their contractor used, and we just let it go. It's, there may very well never be a problem there. It is a subpar material, but that was the difficulty when we get into a situation like that, or someone, doesn't put a tracer wire, they don't use the fitting that we prefer. That's why we would just kind of uniformly like to say, this is what we require, and this is how we assure that it's been done this way.
Is there any way that you can specify on building permits that is not to be covered unless inspected by you or,
Yeah,
I mean, why would?
that's a great idea, Shirley.
Yeah,
we can, and
it'll stop
If
them
that's-
once and then they'll not wanna do it again.
yeah. I think the reason we thought that the V&K thing was a good deal is because these plumbers are already dealing with V&K on all the interior stuff. But ultimately, if the board doesn't want to do this inspection process, we'll continue to do it and we will try and make tweaks. It already says all that. When they get their building
Maybe there ought to
permit,
be a fine
it
if
already
they
says
don't.
that. Yeah, well, it would just come down to making them dig it up and redo it. And, if that's what we want to do, so be it. We're trying to move to a system that works better, but ultimately, we'll do whatever you guys want to do to make it
I'm
work.
gonna sound naive here, okay, but Pat or Ben, could this be, when we put a water line in, is it next to or close to where the sewer line is?
Typically, in the old part of town, yes. The new part of town, they do put a separation. It's usually a 10-foot separation between
Okay.
the sewer and water.
And the electrical is inspected by the state, is that right? And there's a charge for that, isn't there?
Yeah,
to
the
the
state
homeowner?
charges for that.
It is.
Okay. What would happen if we could negotiate with B and Kim, that when they're out there doing the sewer inspection, they do the water inspection and negotiate the same price? Say, just throw it in.
I think that's where we're at with where they said we can negotiate price. The council has their part, which is the sewer. We have our part is the water. Whether it will make a difference if the city council chooses to participate. V&K is already gonna be out there inspecting that sewer. I don't know if they'll work with us,
And that's
It would
what I'm
make sense.
asking. Maybe we didn't need to sit down with B and K and say, if you're gonna do this for the city and the sewer, why don't you just throw in the water and do that inspection as well? Because I think, I remember when I lived in Des Moines, I had my, what do you call it, out on the street?
Curb stop.
Curb stop
Tap.
broke. And I thought, oh, so I called, being a good citizen, I called the water department and said, there's a big puddle out in my parking. Well, he come out and dug it up, says, well, you gotta replace this, you know? And I wouldn't plan on doing that, but it cost me about $1,000 to do it, you know? It's part of owning a home, you know?
One thing that's interesting about Stuart and small towns in general, most cities of any size, the homeowner owns everything all the way. That is pretty much any bigger city you go to, that's how they're gonna handle it. Small towns like Stuart, we tend to own everything up to including the curb stop, which saves the homeowner a ton of money. Anytime there's a leak on the tap, the line to the curb stop, or the curb stop goes bad, that never a penny. We take care of that. So it's a pretty big advantage for the people of Stuart. I don't know if everyone's aware that that's different than it is in some places.
That's the way mine was. My line was cracked just beyond the curb stop, so I had to put a new one in. So, but I guess I would like to see if we could sit down with B&K and try to work it out where, you know, I think Brian's right that we're adding more, you know, more expenses onto a homeowner, but I think most homeowners would recognize that that's part of building a new house, you know? So, but I think if we could sit down with B&K and reason with them a little bit, and if we can, we can, but, you know, if we can get by doing this without having it cost any more than what it's costing the city, you know, I think it's a win-win, so.
And, oh, sorry.
I mean, as a homeowner who you let me know recently that I'm one of those where it's not put in correctly. I mean, 8 years later down the road, I'm like, there's nothing I can do. It was never inspected. You know, I expected it to be put in as per the way the city wanted to. I mean, if we can do it without passing on more charges to the home builders, great. But it really should be inspected and made sure that it's following what the city is dictating. That's how they want it installed, type of material, pressure rating, all of that.
So Ash, can you take this back to the city council, and what was proposed and approved by the city council, merely add what Ben is asking to and tell them to live with the fees they've got? I mean, that's what I would request, exactly what Shirley has suggested, exactly what Craig is asking for, and Ben is suggesting, and they have more than doubled the fees on homeowners. They should be able to incorporate this inspection with no cost.
That's what I'd like to see us do.
So I want to just understand it. You want to include it on the city's fee?
No, I want to, Shirley, I think what I'm understanding, she wants to incorporate this into the current inspection process.
So it's all
B&K
good.
can live with the fees that they've already layered on top of what we
Yeah.
Or do it just once and then check it both.
Well, we would need to know if the city, if Jim has even approached the city, we don't know if the city has adopted this yet or not. If Jim has discussed this, are you familiar?
No, that's why I'm trying to really figure out the details of this. Do you mind sitting with Jim and just find out from him, and maybe we can get to the bottom of this? Because I'm a little bit confused of all these proposals, you know? I'm gonna work with Ben and Jim, trying to really get to the bottom of this and see how we can present it in a more understandable way, because as we speak now, I'm not really figuring things out. So I would sit with Ben and Jim and see really how we can solve this and get back to the utility board.
It would have been very helpful if Jason would have been able to be here tonight, because he
Yeah,
would know
yeah,
where they were
very
at with
much.
it. So,
Maybe he will have an answer to us tomorrow, but I will work with you and Jim and hopefully Jason too. So we'll table the item until next week.
Okay, very good. Next item, number 9, is DGR electric rate study.
Well, I put something in the packet that I got back from our engineer, and our electric rate from SIPCO went up in May, and now they've raised it again, starting in July. And had DGR, I had Blair at DGR take a look at everything, and he thinks that we really need to do something. We can't just sit around and not do anything with this. Something needs to change. So he came up with a couple ideas of raising our rate or putting back in the PCA that used to be in effect here. I don't know if anybody's interested in that. We got rid of that long before I started. And I guess the question is, wanting to do anything with the rate, we really need to have somebody take a deeper look at this. He suggested off the top of his head 4.5%, but he wants to dig into it deeper and make sure that's right if we want to go that route. So I guess what we need to decide really is, do we want to do a rate study, or we can't just eat this?
No, ends up being about 90,000.
Yeah, you know, at the end of the year, SIPCO a lot of times takes that increase away, they drop it. But they haven't said they're gonna do that this time. And with the way electricity is going right now, it's hard to buy, everything's more expensive, it's hard to come by, and everything is just going through the roof. So chances of them lowering their rates, not good.
And I think I've been reading some items in the paper about where this is coming from, and it has to do with the big power users. In other words, Facebook and Google, these big companies that are in Iowa. Mid-American Energy wants to create more wind energy. And these companies are trying to convince them to go with more solar. And there's a big question as to whether which one they should do. And I think the Iowa Utility Board in the end is gonna make the decision here. But in the meantime, I think down, the folks down the line like SIPCO and us are worried about this, what this is gonna do for rates. Now, I think however they do it, the rate is gonna go up, and that's basically what they're saying.
It is.
And, Pat gives us an option here of doing something temporarily, thinking maybe SIPCO will rescind it. But I'm really skeptical of a temporary increase. I think if they increase, it's gonna stay increased, and it's gonna be a permanent increase. So,
And if they do rescind it at the end of the year, we could look into doing that too.
yeah,
Probably not a good chance of them
but that rate's already gone into effect, hasn't it, Pat?
for the July billing.
Yeah. And is that 4.5%? Was that what the increase was?
3.5, so from May to July, it's a total of about 6%. I shouldn't say 6%, it's 6 mils.
Right,
And 1 mil is 1/10 of a cent.
okay. So how long would it take Blair to come up with some figures he'd really be satisfied with? I mean, could we hold this up until the next meeting, until August, or do we need to make a move now? Because the rate went up July 1,
They
right?
did. They upped it July 1 without really notifying it.
Yeah, they didn't.
I got no notification of it. For him to do a rate study, you're looking at least a month.
Yeah, at least, I'm sure. So I guess that's the decision we have to make. Do we want to go ahead and increase this by 4.5% now? Or swallow it for a month or two and do something later when we have, I think Blair's been pretty good about what these, what the rates are gonna do here, so.
I'd rather do a rate study before raising that.
Well, that makes sense. It really does make sense.
And even if you want to increase the rate, we have to have a solution. So maybe the whole thing can be combined, rate study with the resolution for next week.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Brian, are you good with that?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, everybody else,
We can-
anybody else? Okay, so,
I'll call him tomorrow and let him know.
Okay,
How does Chip interact, and I'm just asking as a newbie, how does he interact in these cash flow analysis with, electric? We have DGR do that, is that,
yeah, DGR is.
DGR normally does it on the electric side.
is that something that Chip could integrate, or, I mean, I don't know, I'm used to his analytic approach, so who is, I guess DGR is just another,
Well, they've always done our electric engineering,
okay, all right,
so I mean, these guys are pretty good, so.
gotcha.
So let's do it that way.
okay, we'll do a rate study and resolution for next meeting.
Okay, very good. City administrator reports.
Okay, that, the month of June is the last month of the fiscal year. On the first page, you will see we have 11 million in the bank. That's a big number, but half of that is money we got for the water project. So you go to page 2, the difference between the beginning of the fiscal year, July 1st, at the end of fiscal year, it shows that we made 6 million, 0.6, we didn't really make 6.6, because that has the bond issue that we just, if I take all these things out, all these calculations, we'll be making 300K for the fiscal year. On page 3, we stayed within the budget. I did amend the budget to make it 10 million, just to add that 6 million for the water project. But we stayed with the original budget and we didn't even exceed it.
Oh, okay. We didn't have to,
No.
okay.
On page 4, it shows you these months, how much between the beginning of June and the end of June, we made 6.4 million. But we'll let it go. We go to next page, which is a breakdown to the budget. Like I said, we stayed within the budget in our operation. So we end the year in very good shape considering the budget. The next report is a delinquent account. We only have one. Will be shown on page 2 with the check mark on the right and left. We go to the delinquent account paid in full. We have 4. 2 shown on page 1 and 2 shown on page 2, and that's collection from the offset program. Next report will be payment agreement. We have 6 added with the check mark on right and left. The next report is paid in full payment agreement. We have 2, one shown on page 1. Second one shown on page 2 with a check mark on it. And that takes us all the way to page 6, the end of the report. Next report is a budget page, no changes, and it seems like everybody has credit, that's a good sign. The next report, PCs and bankrupt, no change. Our last report is the offset program and the correction for your information.
Read anything into the fact that we seem to have accounts and fewer delinquent accounts paid in full.
Yeah, so I did a good job on condensing these reports, so we don't have to have a big report.
Okay.
So just condensing the report.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
you bet, thank you. Okay, we'll go to public forum. Ted, do you have anything?
Everybody got a packet. Apparently, except me. This one,
Oh, okay.
and all this is just for information. We've been notified again by SEPCO that we may have to generate for them. And we are obligated to. We have a signed contract that says we will generate for them if they need it. And we will generate a certain amount.
And we've done that before, so.
We have done it before,
It's been a while.
but not a lot.
Yeah.
And we also, within that contract, they're gonna take most of our generation. And within that contract, they can also ask us to shed some additional load. Now, that's probably not gonna happen, but there could be an instance where everybody's talking about brownouts and stuff like that. Probably not gonna happen, pretty unlikely, but they're hurting for generation right now, so when it gets up to 100 every day, come August, or even next week,
They're gonna call and want us to generate.
they're gonna call and probably want us to generate. And every spring, we do an urge test, and however much power we produce, that, and it's the same every year, we do the same thing, we pledge that much power to them. And it's probably 3/4 or better of what our capability of generating is.
And we get reimbursed for that, don't we?
We do.
It's a lot less than it used to be.
Yeah.
It is. It is a lot less than it used to be, but right now we get around $7,000 off of our monthly power bill just by having those generators sit out there.
It used to be a lot more.
Yeah, that's right.
That's how they pay us for that. But if we have to run for them, they pay, they have a formula and they figure in labor, fuel, everything, and we do get paid for that. They don't write us a check for it, they just take it off our power bill. So I just wanted everybody to realize that we might be in a situation where we have to do that.
Is there ever a time when they ask us to generate at full capacity and, you know, it's not enough or then they tell us we have to shed power even if we're producing full power for them?
We could. That would be worst case scenario down the road, probably not gonna happen. Hate to say it would never happen, but pretty unlikely,
Yeah, okay.
pretty unlikely. Because there's a lot of other municipals that are part of SIPCO that can generate as well. It's not just us.
Right, right.
There's a lot of, and if you look in there, there's a kind of a map. SIPCO now is part of this thing called MISO,
Mm-hmm.
and that goes, it's not very good, it goes all the way to the Gulf Coast. It's huge. And if part of MISO experiences trouble, like say in Arkansas, they are having trouble meeting their demand down there, they can call upon us to generate. And it kind of explains in here how MISO will issue a notice and it'll go through a line, it'll go through SIPCO, it kind of trickles down to us.
Kind of a phase thing.
Yeah, and if we ever had trouble, we would have other places in this whole group that would generate for us if we couldn't get enough
Oh, I see.
power.
Yeah.
It's kind of a two-way street, it's not just a one-sided thing. But that's kind of how it goes. They regionalized electricity in an effort to try to avoid outages. That's what happened. So Texas is still on their own.
Well, I don't think we'd want to
Yeah.
get something done.
But you can see all the others around the
Yeah.
country. There's a lot of different organizations or companies that do that. But when we get called upon to run, we have to run. Otherwise, we can be penalized. You know, a lot of times, like a megawatt of power sells on the open market for $900. When there's a crunch and there's not enough power, that goes to about $9,000. And if we don't run when we're supposed to, otherwise, if they say, we need Stuart to generate a megawatt of power, and we don't do it, we can be penalized that $9,000 for not doing it. But there's instances where, a lot of times, there's been a lot of instances where one of the other towns, they'll fire up their generators and something's wrong and they can't run.
Oh.
They've never come back on them and tried to collect on them. It's kind of just a threat that's out there.
Okay.
All this was just so everybody kind of had a better understanding of what we might get into. And it's it's a lot more of a problem now than it has been recently because all the coal-fired generation is shutting down. And over in Palo in eastern Iowa, the Dwayne Arnold nuclear plant got shut down. So those were two big sources of power for everybody. And now we're relying basically on wind turbines.
Yeah.
Wind
And that's
turbines
the
solar.
discussion they're having about should we put more wind turbines in or should we put solar in? You know?
Well, and the biggest problem with both of them is when we hit our peaks, they can't meet the peak.
Yeah.
You can't turn it up like you could a nuke plant or a
Yep.
coal-fired generating plant. You just can't turn it up. There's a lot more natural gas generation going in, and those can be cranked up a little bit, but they can't build it fast enough. They shut down all this other stuff too fast before we had something to replace it. So that's where we're.
Okay. Okay, anything else? Guys, do you have anything?
I just find it interesting.
I-
thought everybody
Just
should-
had- We would always be able to fill in for sales position, sales taking over my position.
Okay,
So, you know, anybody will not be on it, that would help.
I saw the ad in the papers.
So,
I got it.
Pat, how are we dealing with your computer issues now that Mike's gone?
Haven't had a problem
Okay.
yet. And I say yet,
Maybe this is inappropriate, but will you come back on a contract basis to do that for you?
Mike, he has indicated that he would.
Okay.
And maybe we need to, at the next meeting, I kind of neglected to put that on the agenda for tonight, because I didn't want
That's
to
okay.
drag this out or anything any longer. It needed to be, but we can talk about that if we want him to be on a contract basis for us. He's said he would do it.
Okay,
We just need to determine how much we would pay him. Some of the stuff that we got going on with that new system that runs the generators that got put in this past year, it might be helpful to have some
yes,
help here and there.
yeah,
Mike was a big help on that.
yeah, that's, because that's always been that issue. I think Shirley probably remembers some of that when we'd have problems with getting the computer to do what it was supposed to do, and, you know, we've always kind of fought that a little bit, but.
We got some new programming now for the generators, for the cat generators.
Oh, yeah,
That's what we spent $30,000 on in
Yeah.
the last budget year to upgrade that, because it hadn't been upgraded for almost 20 years. So that's where that money went, and it's pretty much up and running, isn't it, Dustin?
Yes.
good. Okay, good. Anything else? We stand adjourned.